Right view is the first step in the Eightfold Path. It serves as the foundation for the path, since without it, none of the preceding steps would be accomplishable. The first set of right views are actually contained in the Four Noble Truths, which in brief state that there is suffering in life. Suffering originates from causes and conditions. There is a means to end suffering, and that means to end suffering is the Eightfold Path itself. Even at the level of mundane right view, which consists of becoming aware of essential cosmic principles, like karma or impermanence, as well as perceiving physical life more or less objectively, the difficult truth is that most people in this age don't perceive anything with very much accuracy. We really just get by in life by doing our best to interpret and translate people, places, concepts, and situations. We all do this, and yet all of us come to different conclusions and carry different points of view. That's the problem with wrong view. We don't agree with each other, and we don't see things as they truly are. We don't see reality. If the majority of people on Earth had a well-developed sense of mundane right view, we wouldn't be struggling the way we do. We wouldn't be fighting all the time, at home, at school, or at work. We wouldn't be getting confused all the time in relationships, overwhelmed by our partner's criticism, paranoid about what they're thinking about us, ashamed or uncertain of our self-worth. We wouldn't be constantly turning to others for second opinions. We wouldn't have body image problems, because what we'd see in the mirror would be exactly what is there. Nothing less, nothing more. Have you ever argued with someone over the size of something, or the amount of fries you placed in an order that you were making for a customer at work? Have you ever disagreed with someone about the meaning of another person's joke or explanation? Or about whether or not so-and-so's face turned red, or whether or not somebody's tone meant that they were angry? When do we ever really know? We always have to guess about everything we perceive. If the majority of people had right view, all of us would see eye to eye, and most of our problems would be solved. And this is a possible attainment at both the individual level and as a mass group. When a civilization is evolving and improving over time, it's because most of the people that make up that group are part of the same wave. So they share the same karma and happen to have more of their consciousness awakened. Our human race was like this in the times of ancient India, during the time of the Buddha, in ancient Egypt, and ancient Greece. And most of the time, when any civilization on any planet is evolving, it's also because that whole society has the teachings of the Dharma in one form or another. So why do we have wrong view? How did we get it? Why do we struggle? Well, conscious perception, at least on this planet, in this age of Kali Yuga, has become very fragile and unreliable. The humans on this planet didn't just evolve over the centuries. Rather, we involved or involuted. All the animals and humans became more complex, more conditioned, only to gain physical survival traits. This kind of progress is the antithesis of conscious advancement. It is not an improvement from a spiritual standpoint, but a complication of energy and karma. So to understand this better, we can categorize perception into two primary types: egoic perception and conscious perception. Egoic perception is conditioned and subjective. Conscious perception is unconditioned and objective. With egoic perception, consciousness still exists, and that's of course the very power that allows us to perceive in the first place. The distinction is that consciousness with egoic perception is trapped and modified in many different ways. One analogy for this is to think of consciousness as a pure white, bright flashlight. If you were to place a translucent color filter over the flashlight, the color of the light would change and even dim slightly, because the filter is specifying the light to only reveal a specific color range and hide the rest. Now imagine what the light of a flashlight would look like if you were to place hundreds of color filters and even lenses in front of it. The light would become so distorted and so discolored and so dim that you wouldn't even be able to use it. Furthermore, whatever you shine that flashlight on would look completely different than how it should look during the day. Conscious perception is just like a pure white, bright flashlight, without color filters. It's not modified or limited by conditions or filters of any kind. That's why it shines so bright and you can use it anywhere and everything will look the way it's supposed to. There are no obstructions in front of it, so you can see clearly. So to answer the question, this humanity has perverse wrong view because our consciousness is heavily conditioned by the filters of the ego. What are known as samskaras in Sanskrit or kantas in Pali, just like a flashlight with an excess of color filters and lenses covering the light source. And over the past few thousand years, our consciousness has become increasingly dim and weak, hypnotized by sights and easily distracted. Eastern religions talk about the 5 skandhas, which in Buddhism are called samskaras or kantas. The term means aggregates or groupings. The 5 samskaras are psychological aspects of the mind that produce various functions of consciousness, such as thinking and feeling. The 5 samskaras are also the basic elements of nature that permeate through everything that exists. In the West, most people are more familiar with the concept of the 4 elements of nature, which are earth, water, air, and fire. The 5 samskaras are the same thing, except that Eastern religions have more frequently included the 5th element known as prana. This is the most subtle and refined natural element, which is responsible for providing vital energy and health to living organisms. The Western occult term for this is ether. So the mind consists of 5 samskaras, which are organized into 4 natural elements and 1 subtle element. When it comes to our psychological makeup, all of us are born with different amounts and combinations of the 5 samskaras. This is the innate factor that predisposes us to perceive things differently. The 5 samskaras also express themselves through the 12 zodiac signs of astrology. So let's look at what's at work here. 12 zodiac signs, 4 terrestrial elements of nature, or samskaras, and 3 zodiac signs per element. 3 signs that belong to water, 3 that belong to earth, 3 for air, and 3 for fire. Now, the way this applies to the human psyche is through 3 zodiac placements. The sun sign, which is the month and day a person is born, the moon sign, which for us makes up nearly our entire subconsciousness, and the ascendant or rising sign, which is the time and degree at which the sun is rising during birth. The rising sign, however, doesn't have a substantial influence over our personality, compared to the sun and moon signs. It's like a dash of spice in a dish. It doesn't change the dish into a different type of dish. It just adds some extra flavor. Sometimes you can feel your rising sign influencing you every now and then, and occasionally your outward expression can come out from it. This composition of natural elements and zodiac signs is organized further as such. Each sign is measured using 30 units or degrees of travel. Your sun sign contains much of your outward personality, your self-expression, your taste, your perception. However, nature rarely creates things with clear and defined borders. Everything grows and changes gradually in a spectrum. So our astrological personality placements tend to contain influences from what are known as cusp signs, which are the nearest signs at both ends of measuring points. So for example, if you're born in December, you're a Sagittarius. That is your sun sign. But if you were born specifically on the 21st, then that means you were born right at the cusp between Sagittarius and Capricorn. Therefore, your sun sign traits would carry almost an equal amount of influence from both signs. A cusp is a sign that is about 3 to 4 degrees away from another sign, but even a sign that is 6 or 7 degrees away from a sign will receive a very strong influence from that sign. The moon and the ascendant work in the same way, except that they travel and change at different rates than the sun sign. So when a person is born, a few combinations of astrology can occur. A lot of the time, we come across people with a cusp somewhere, either in the sun or the moon, and then their other sign happens to be full spectrum, meaning that there is no influence from the neighboring signs. And much of the time, the signs are coming from different elements. This kind of person has a relatively balanced arrangement of energies and elements because they almost carry all 4 natural elements. In some cases, you'll come across people who are very balanced and have all 4 elements equally distributed by their cusps. So their sun sign is a cusp and their moon sign is a cusp. People like this tend to be well-rounded because they're receiving and transforming impressions evenly through the 4 elements. So they can have many different interests and tastes. This combination of energy gives you all the traits that humans have, and will allow you to be good at any skill, from physics to social work. The next thing you will see sometimes in people is an overabundance of the same element, along with a lack of other elements. This can happen either because the person is a double or triple sign, meaning that they have the same sign for both the sun and moon placements, and even rising placement. Or because 2 or 3 of their signs come from the same element. So this could look like someone who has their sun in Scorpio, moon in Cancer, and rising in Pisces. Different signs, same element. In this example, they're all water signs. It's not uncommon to find people with an overabundance of the same element, such as water or earth, but it is rare to find people with double and even triple signs. The majority of people predominantly carry 3 elements in their psyche coming from their astrology. Many people only carry 2 elements, and some people have all 4 in almost equal amounts. So now that we've gone over our psychological makeup, how do these influences affect our perception? The element of water is responsible for giving us rich human emotions and intuitive creativity. It's an energy that gives us that warmth that allows us to intimately connect and bond with others, including other living creatures. Water also gives us a stronger innate ability to feel conscious emotions like remorse, compassion, and empathy. It is a feminine, nurturing, detail-oriented energy. So too much water can hinder rational thinking, cause breakdowns whereby we shout or cry out of stress, and it can lead to excessive attention to detail, which leads to exaggerated perception, perfectionism, overthinking, and ultimately this causes us to take things too seriously. Air is the element of intellect, innovation, and communication. Air enlivens us with ideas, excitement, and sociability. It also provides us with a greater capacity for logical and rational thinking. Air is an active, expansive, independent, and masculine energy. It encourages us to inquire and experiment, and helps us open our minds to new possibilities and different perspectives. However, an overabundance of cool air can chill the warmth of the heart. Since air is a very active energy, too much of it can make a person restless and easily bored. And since it's not an emotional element, an overabundance can make a person superficial and emotionally immature. People like this grow up solving their problems using their intellect, so they rarely allow themselves to deeply experience and sit with heavy emotions like grief, depression, anger. As soon as something goes wrong, their mind jumps to problem solving, and very soon their emotions subside. People like this don't know what it's like to hold a grudge on someone for many years. They don't know what it's like to feel the endless pain that comes from being angry at a person, always wanting to take revenge, but never being able to obtain closure or justice. They don't know the depression that follows after having wasted many years living with the distraction of anger. So although air helps expand the mind to new perspectives, it can actually make it hard to maintain the same point of view in or interest on something, like a problem, or a hobby, or a relationship. And thus, it can lead us to stop taking even important things like careers or relationships seriously. Air does not obsess over insubstantial details, but instead, it allows us to prioritize by putting things into perspective and seeing things as a whole. Earth is the element of construction, organization, and physicality. Earth gifts us with the ability of craftsmanship and practical action. Along with this, Earth makes us grounded so that we can maintain the dedication and focus that we need to carry through with projects and goals. Like water, Earth is a detail-oriented, feminine energy. For this reason, both earth and water are morally strong elements. People of this kind of stable energy do not let you down because they are very serious about their responsibilities. Earth is not a restless, active energy, but it is the most constructive and physical. So that's why you see earth-dominant people always crafting and gardening, building, working out, and renovating their homes. They have a taste for material things. Now, too much earth, however, causes imbalances like fastidiousness, so excessive attention to detail, grudging, materialism, and complacency. Too much attention to detail can lead to perfectionism, overcriticism, and pettiness. Too much influence from the rupa samskara leads to materialism and superficiality. The opposite of determination is stubbornness and grudging, and the inclination toward a stable lifestyle can actually lead to complacency. Lastly, fire enlivens us with passion, zeal, independence, and intuition. Like air, fire is a masculine and independent energy, meaning that those who have it have an innate ability to think for themselves and do things their own way without losing self-certainty and becoming insecure about what others think of them. Similar to air, fire energy does not become overly concerned with details because it's not a perfectionist element. This independence and courage are the most empowering characteristics of fire. Now, fire is not the element of emotion, but it is the element of passion. So likewise, people with a lot of fire can be reactive, and they tend to get angry easily. I'm using the word passion in the Eastern context. It doesn't mean that you're passionate about archery or your cooking career. The word refers to intense animal passions, like anger, desire, and lust. So anger and narcissism, whether deliberate or accidental, these are the primary imbalances of fire. How does this affect perception? The Buddhist texts explain that anger is a hindrance because it distorts perception. Not only does anger cause distortion, but the moment you become angry, instantly your nervous system kicks in, and your body begins damaging itself little by little as it excretes stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. This directly affects the vital body or etheric body, which is the very interface we need in order to see anything clearly in meditation. The vital body has to be as still as a pond in order to see with clairvoyance. So that is one of the most obvious forms of misperception right there. The inability to see anything in meditation because you're angry or agitated. Another thing that happens when we're angry is that we become impatient and begin to feel the need to take things for ourselves. Even though just a moment ago we were practicing loving kindness, or piti. And at the same time, too much anger causes us to lose our ability to think rationally, and so we act on impulses. This is why all of us perceive reality differently. Even when some of us experience the same upbringing, the same cultural conditioning, and so on, the external factors that affect the way we look at things, like the era we were born in, the towns we grew up in, the parents we were raised by, the schools we went to, and the jobs we've had, all just add another layer of complexity to our situation. Rupa relates to physical matter and other similar types of form that we can sense in other dimensions. Vedana is responsible for feeling, which in this context means sensations. So it's the ability to perceive with all of our senses. It's not just emotional feelings. Samma relates to perception itself, as well as thinking and discrimination. This kind of perception is conditioned at the level of samskaras, however. It is not the conscious perception that we have when we're in samadhi. Samskara is our volition or willpower. It gives us impulses and allows us to act on our decisions. And finally, vijnana is consciousness itself, which provides us with objective perception, discernment, and universal knowledge. A lot more can be said about each psychic disposition, but the important lesson about the samskaras is that they teach us that all we are as a being or self is an arrangement of aggregates that specify and filter consciousness. That is what samskara means, or what samskaras, plural, means. It means heaps, groupings, aggregates. And each samskara is the root of thousands of related aggregates that are in conflict with one another, each one with its own preference. The samskaras accumulate gradually, lifetime after lifetime, every time we feed desire or fulfill a condition. And by acting on desires and conditions, we collect karma in proportion to our actions and the makeup of our samskaras. Without these 5 aggregates, and without karma, we essentially wouldn't exist, or we would have reached some level of Buddhahood. At the very least, we wouldn't exist the way we do today, physically, individually, and in constant pursuit of satisfying these conditions that we think make us happy. There are 2 types of right view. There is mundane right view and supramundane or ultimate right view. The Buddhist concept anatta teaches that the true nature or true self-essence of all living organisms is not found in the individualized selfhood of the samskaras. Since the an in anatta means not or without. So the term means not self, or that which is different from the individual self. The term then that refers to our true self is atta in Pali, or atman in Sanskrit. To discover this right view on selfhood is a very astonishing and profound realization. Because to experience that truth, and not simply understand it intellectually, entails experiencing higher states of consciousness, samadhi states. Then you see for the first time in your life that everything that you thought was you and part of you, your name, your body, your gender, your hair, your emotions, your style, your taste in music, was never the real you all along. It was an illusion. In The Cycle of Vital Points, Master Padmasambhava said that the view is an unbiased and vast pervasiveness, free from center and edge, so let your mind essence be uncontrived. So from this perspective of a bodhisattva, right view is the ability to perceive and maintain the awareness of the insubstantiality and impermanence of all things. This is more than mundane right view. This is the awakened perception of supramundane right view. We can sometimes experience moments of this. It can sometimes come from experiences that happen to wake us up and give us immediate comprehensions at certain levels of the mind. But it otherwise develops as we awaken consciousness and eliminate the ego. Insubstantiality is anatta, non-self, the lack of individual selfhood. And impermanence is known as anicca. With this kind of awareness comes greater compassion for all the other beings in samsara who do not have right view and are therefore suffering. The Eightfold Path is at the service of right view, which is found in the Four Noble Truths. Right view is like the seed of a fruit. Without the seed, the fruit would not exist. Treading the Eightfold Path without right view is like walking through a forest at night. You wouldn't be able to see clear enough to get back home. But with that being said, we have to live with a lot of wrong view as we carry on along the path to liberation, since that is the level at which we are at. So Buddhism offers some good practices to help us cultivate right view. The primary one being meditation. When we look at how living with cosmic virtues affects us physically, we can see that even the body responds substantially to right view. There is an evolutionary pattern of nerves that respond very well to the superior emotions that arise out of right view. The nervous system maintains its relaxed state when our view is harmonious. And when we experience supramundane right view, typically when we're in samadhi during meditation, we activate new neurological circuits in the brain and nerves in the body that we rarely use otherwise. Circuits that only a small percentage of people access on a regular basis. And when we experience wrong view, we get upset, we get angry or anxious, and the body likewise seizes up, and functions like cognition and digestion shut off. The wrong view causes all of our problems. Any misperception is a delusion. It can come from superficial beauty, it can come from a fantasy, from imagination, from being deceived, or from bursts of passion. Wrong view causes uncertainty, and consequently, that uncertainty leads us to feeling insecure and paranoid and in fear. In Buddhism, the list of wrong views is called the four inversions of perception, mind, and view. They are as follows. Taking impermanence as permanence. Taking suffering as happiness. Taking non-self as self. Taking non-beauty as beauty. And there is also something called the four upright perceptions, which is the same list, except that the states and conditions are reversed. We reconstruct everything we see and experience, and see things that don't exist. Nearly everything we perceive is misconstrued because our consciousness is conditioned. So our reality is relative to our level. This is known as conventional reality for us. And mundane right view is necessary in order to understand conventional reality. As far as Buddhist texts go, the requisite for right view is to choose between views. So there's no requirement to prove what happens after death, for instance. The scriptures say this because it's more important to make a choice about whether or not you have faith in truths like rebirth and suffering than to wait for something like a science experiment to prove everything absolutely. The Buddha also encouraged the cultivation of joy in the form of loving kindness or piti. He didn't say that we have to maintain a cold, indifferent, emotionless self-observation, which a lot of schools teach. They are simply leaving out the cultivation of joy and superior emotions. So in our daily practice, we can strive to experience the flood of joy and well-being that arises from mundane right view, and develop this joy and concentration such that we eventually experience supramundane right view during jhanic or samadhi meditation. Because to experience it all the time essentially means that you're awakened, either temporarily, or a few hours, or a few days, even a few years, or permanently, through a lot of self-work. And here are some examples of mundane Buddhist right views. The right view towards the truth of suffering and dangers is to have concern and awareness. Another one states that there is mother and there is father. And what this is saying is that all living souls have an intrinsic mother and father, because parenthood is necessary for spiritual growth. Now, this isn't always the case physically or outwardly, since many creatures in nature, such as fish, don't receive nurturing from their parents. But when investigated deeper, you will find that every soul indeed has an internal mother, which is the Tathagata, the Divine Mother, the human consciousness, and an internal father, who is the Atta, or Atman in Sanskrit, the being. Another truth states that there is this world and there is a world beyond. This is the conviction of life after death and rebirth. Another truth states that there is generosity and there are results from it. So this is saying that generosity should be recognized as a cosmic virtue. It shouldn't be disregarded or taken with doubt, as if some obscure tradition from a long time ago just made up the rule of generosity, and now we can just forget about it because it doesn't have any karmic value. It's not relevant to us. We don't want to lose all of our possessions and things if we give too much. No, it's not like that. It's a cosmic virtue, and part of the reason is because it works with karma. Another right view asserts that self-observation and mindfulness of the present moment doesn't require concern with time, either of the past or the future. So how do we develop right view? Well, the Buddha once said something important about what we should do with any kind of information that we come across. What he said was this: do not believe anything simply because you have heard it. Do not believe in anything simply because it is spoken and rumored by many. Do not believe in anything simply because it is found written in your religious books. Do not believe anything merely on the authority of your teachers and elders. Do not believe in traditions because they have been handed down for many generations, but only after observation and analysis, when you find that things agree with you because of reason and are conducive to the benefit of others, should you accept it and live by it. This is a very good reminder about all the countless things we read and hear about every day, especially in this information age. He makes a good point. You're never guaranteed that something is true until you see for yourself. So when he states that we should always analyze or scrutinize information, he is actually referring to meditation, as well as other effective means. And aside from scientific experiments, which are not always possible or practical for everyday people to run, meditation is the best way to confirm anything. It is truly remarkable that all of us have a psychic power that allows us to see the truth of things. And in addition to this, the Buddha also taught that we should not invest in what he called the signs of things. The sign of the beautiful, the sign of the ugly, or the sign of pleasant and unpleasant sensations and situations. This includes the pleasant feeling we get from material gain. The sign of something was his term for the endless false concepts, labels, and meanings we create and associate with things. So instead, we must get used to seeing things as they are, without biases from the ego. Because the ego tends to either really like and prefer something, or really dislike something. And this is not an accurate way of seeing. In relationships, for example, we might hold on to the expectation that someone will change one day. And out of that expectation, we might carry a false hope for them. But what if they don't stop their alcoholism? What if they don't stop their abuse? Then that hope was a sign or misinterpretation of something that seemed beautiful, but was really a fantasy. So with this, whenever we're dealing with conflicts and confusion, we should always just look at the facts. Whether those facts come from direct observation or from something like a legal document. Because the worst thing that we do to ourselves and others is assume and theorize based on nothing. Nothing but a few paranoid observations that perhaps serve as evidence, but are not actual proof. So maybe we started work with someone one day, and they walked in and didn't say hi to us, didn't start conversation with us, and immediately we began assuming that they don't like us or care about us. So when I heard this example from one of my managers, she told me that she was very preoccupied that day and simply didn't have the energy or time to talk. And she didn't think it was a big deal because she works there all the time and has already talked to everyone. But that wasn't how the other person took it. The employee felt so rejected that she called the head chef that day, crying about how the manager doesn't like her. And as for myself, I saw the truth of that situation because the manager told me the fact of how she actually felt that day, which was preoccupied and tired, and so she was just trying to get her work done. Maybe it was a bit inconsiderate that she didn't say hi, but she had nothing against the employee. She was just in her head. So when we get ideas about people and concepts, and when we just imagine how people are and come up with assumptions and theories, these are all just fantasies. We cannot draw conclusions from them. If they didn't say it, don't think it. If they didn't say that criticism about you, then you shouldn't assume that they're thinking it. Because most of the time, it's just our paranoia talking. Communicate well. If you're uncertain about something, then just be upfront and ask people what they mean by the things they say or do. Then at the end of the day, after we've collected some impressions to look into, we meditate. And since we're working on developing right view, the type of meditation we need is retrospection, or analytical meditation. This is known as vipassana.